Today, I'm joined by Ryan Sullivan, Chief of Staff at SiteCare, an industry-leading provider of managed WordPress services. SiteCare helps businesses keep their sites secure, fast, and optimized for performance, SEO, and accessibility. They've made Termly a part of their own operations and now recommend it to their clients as well. Let's hear why. Hi, Ryan. Thanks for joining us. Can you give us a quick intro?
Yeah, so you summed it up pretty well, but we are a WordPress support and maintenance company primarily that touches lots of different parts of WordPress. So everything from performance optimization to accessibility fixes to we found ourselves doing lots of legacy WordPress upgrades and compatibility testing and things that way. And it's really what we focused on for the last 10 years or more. So that's kind of the area where we've dialed in, and that's what we do every day.
Fantastic. And who are your main clients?
That is a very good question. So we have a lot of clients, right? So when we very first started out, the majority of our clients kind of fit into the small business, a lot of them very small businesses. That's evolved quite a bit over the years. Now we find ourselves working with still plenty of small businesses, but more in the medium-sized business and enterprise, and specifically in some relatively highly regulated spaces. So things like IT and healthcare and finance, those are some of the areas where we find kind of concentrations or pockets of clients. And that's what makes up the bulk of our client base today.
Fantastic. So with so much of your work focused on performance, SEO, security, how important has data privacy become both for your team and for the clients that you support?
It's become essential. Clients are asking more questions about privacy than they ever have before. Usually it kind of trickles down from their legal departments wanting to know, hey, are we in a good spot with this? And those legal departments are asking the questions because of compliance concerns with things like GDPR and CCPA and some of the other privacy laws that are out there.
There's a few.
There's a few, and we know there are going to be a lot more, right? Always changing landscape.
Exactly.
So that's something that we've just seen a lot more conversations about.
Yeah, absolutely. And before Termly, how were you and your clients managing privacy compliance? What was the approach?
We kind of found ourselves in the middle of it, mainly because we did have clients start to ask these types of questions, and the solutions that were being used, frankly, were just they were patchwork, right? Like there's free plugins you can get on, you can get on the WordPress.org repository. There are a whole bunch of different platforms that they're kind of CMS agnostic. They're kind of meant to work with lots of different platforms. We just found ourselves in a place of, a client would say, oh, our legal team sent us this script from some random service that they signed up for. We need this to be implemented. And it would be some kind of complex API integration just to get a consent banner and privacy policy displaying on their website, right? It felt like there was way too many pieces involved.
Yeah. So when you're looking at the challenges or the gaps that kind of pushed you to look for a standardized, better solution, would you say that simplicity, ease of use, all of those kinds of things were kind of the most important, or were there any other challenges that prompted you to solve this for your clients?
Yeah, so simplicity and ease of use were two huge ones. Typically speaking, when there's some kind of internal or external mandate coming to put good compliance practices in place, clients want it done yesterday. And when that happens, it's like, okay, well, we understand you want this done quickly, but the solution that you've handed to us is not a straightforward thing to implement the way that it is. Just not straightforward to implement. So there was just the speed to implementation, but also cost. Frankly, was something that, especially a lot of the clients and those small business clients, it's like there are a lot of solutions out there that have a monthly fee with a comma in it to do those two very basic things of just literally having a dynamic privacy policy and displaying consent banners and managing cookies. And it's like those never felt like great options to recommend either.
Yeah, so affordability really being a priority for your clients, of course. That makes total sense. Tell me more about the questions that you get from your customers, from your clients. What are they asking about data privacy, about compliance?
Typically, it's pretty surface level stuff, and it depends on the organization, right? So if it is a larger organization, there's typically some kind of internal mandate that says, and they'll have hundreds of web properties for some of these larger organizations, right? And they'll say, okay, internal mandate says we need to be compliant with whatever regulation, and we need to have these elements in place on all of our websites by X date. In those types of situations, the details are probably a little bit more granular, like it needs to adhere or apply to, some particular specification, or it needs to pass. And we have some clients who, those rules change regionally, right? And they want the website to kind of handle all of that dynamically. But with a lot of clients, it's more driven by I read a headline where somebody like me got sued
Yeah.
for not being compliant, and I just want to do whatever I need to not get sued.
Yeah.
And so what a lot of the conversations start like that.
That's what I hear from other partners as well. Is a question from clients are like, how do we just avoid that, minimize risk, and check those boxes for limiting the legal vulnerabilities. So what made you decide to choose Termly, not just for SiteCare, but as something that you'd recommend to your clients? Was there like a specific moment that solidified the decision, or was it a gradual buildup and the straw that finally broke the camel's back? Or
Yeah, really for us, especially in the type of work we do, solutions that are reliable and repeatable are extremely valuable to us. So we were just seeing enough volume of conversations and tickets around this to say, okay, what can be our go-to solution that covers most of the needs of our clients? We have some clients that are in some really weird industries or they have some very complex configurations and setups. And we've kind of come to know that there isn't a one-size-fits-all solution for every single edge case, but Termly, from everything that we were looking at, Termly was like covering more than 90% of all the potential use cases that could come up. And so that's when we decided to standardize, build some workflows around it, build some client language around it, and really make it something that's kind of just our immediate go-to when we get requests that fit into that match most of the other requests related to this type of work.
Gotcha. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about how you're using Termly today, both for your own business, for SiteCare, and then across all of the WordPress sites that you manage. Is it more on the consent management side or more on the policy generation? Or what would you say? And I understand each client has their own kind of specific use case, but for the majority of them, tell us a little bit more about like how you're using Termly.
Yeah, I think the two features with Termly that get used more than any is definitely the policy generation. That was always a really big sticking point before we found Termly, because most of the solutions out there were strictly technical solutions, and it was bring your own content, right? It was bring your own contract, bring your own policy to this technical solution, and that is a hard sticking point too, because then as the buyer, you're in a situation where you're like, okay, well now I have to go find not only an attorney, but an attorney that specializes in these different privacy laws. And so there's just lots of friction and roadblocks. So the policy generation piece is super valuable. And then consent management is the other piece that pretty much all of our clients who are using Termly adopt really quickly. You kind of see it everywhere now, but we saw a big concentration initially in Europe, but that's really come stateside for a lot of folks.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tell us a little bit about the workflow and the onboarding. How easy was it to integrate Termly into your processes? Do your clients find the setup process as smooth?
Yeah, I've got a couple of different anecdotes related to that. Trying to think of one case that came up that I think kind of illustrates the point really well is we had a client who was using another tool. They had been using it. They actually hired a freelance developer to implement this other tool for them. They came to us after the freelance developer had spent 18 billable hours getting everything set up and implemented, and it still wasn't working properly. Obviously, at that point, the client was super frustrated. Sure. And they had spent thousands of dollars. And we were like, no. Pause, hit the brakes, sign up here. It's a few $100 a year. Send us the login back, and we'll go through the onboarding on your behalf based on whatever criteria you've given us. And the next day, the problem was solved for them, and they were just like totally so. And I mean, they were back to us with their new Termly account within a few minutes, and they were totally covered in one day for something that they had been waiting literally weeks and spent thousands of dollars on. I mean, that's just to say, like, the onboarding workflow and the implementation workflow is just so much easier than anything else we've tried.
Wow, what an incredible story. What was that client's feedback? What was the reaction when you said, hey, we can solve this for you so simply, so quickly?
They were annoyed.
Probably they were pretty peeved.
They were like, how come I didn't know about this before? That kind of sentiment. Obviously not annoyed with us, but I'm really happy that we had this recommendation for them. But then they were like, just frustrated because it was like, oh, how did I end up in this situation in the first place? It's been a great answer for them.
Yeah. Wow. So Termly is recommended kind of by default on all new projects and clients. When you are onboarding new clients, tell me how the policy generation works. Like, what's the process as far as with the agency? Are clients invited in to create their privacy policy entirely on their own, or Do you help with that?
Yeah,
What's that look
we
like?
typically do it just kind of under their direction, right? So that's kind of the role we play. So lots of time we'll just go through the onboarding with them on a Zoom, take their guidance on the questions that the onboarding wizard is asking. And then the other thing that is, I know this isn't a direct answer to your question, but one of the things that's like become really helpful is the fact that Termly auto updates its policies as well. So when there's some kind of regulation change or there's some kind of changes that does have an impact on the client, like they aren't going back to their attorney every 3 months for revisions, and they don't even have to think about it really, right? Like that's the to me that's the big thing is like I can
How
just like
often do I
I can
need to
like
put man
I
hour
can
into it? Yeah.
yeah I can just like mentally check that off and know it's sorted. So it's not just the initial policy generation, but the ongoing upkeep of it as well that our clients have really bought into.
Would you say that that's the feature that has the biggest impact for you and your clients, like the auto updating and the notification for privacy law changes, or is there something else that's had kind of the biggest impact?
Well, I think if you're thinking about it strictly from a business perspective, that's the piece that seems to feel most like a blanket for the client that makes them feel good.
Yeah.
From a technical implementation standpoint, the thing that I think has become extremely useful is the automated script detection that essentially scans the website and says, here are the things that you are using for tracking on your website, and then giving us on the user side the ability to organize those into the types of data we want to allow collection from before consent is given or after. That's something that with other tools is a lot more complicated process, typically requires manual code level review of here are the things that are collecting data on the website.
So the
A
automation and
big
kind
time
of,
saver. Yeah.
yeah, the set it and forget it. It's meant to be no longer top of mind for you. And so that sounds like that's been a significant value. That's great. Tell me a little bit about some of the measurable benefits that you've experienced in using Termly and recommending it to your clients of like saving time or saving costs, reducing the legal risk, of course, but improving trust or, for SiteCare itself, expanding on your service offerings. What are kind of the biggest benefits that come to mind?
It does save us time. It also I really think a benefit that, and this is something that we like sell with our services too, is this idea of reduced uncertainty, just knowing that something is handled. Termly very much checks that box. And the last thing is it has improved our trust with clients. Like that story I told you originally, that client, like they've gotten out of the game of looking for freelancers to do random things for them. When they need a solution for something, they come to SiteCare and say, what's the best tool for us to be able to do A, B, C, D? And that's been a huge benefit for us. Once we can create that mental shift for the client and get them to trust us enough to ask us what best practices look like and what is the best way to do a thing, like that solidifies our relationship with them for a very long time.
Yeah, it's a great thing to be able to offer expertise and guidance on everything from SEO or page speed all the way over to legal things like privacy compliance. So that's really a significant value add. That's amazing. Tell me a little bit about what kind of feedback you've gotten from clients after implementing Termly.
Yeah, I would say less intimidated. It's something that on the surface is very overwhelming because there are legal components, there are technical components, there are,
It can feel
there
like a
are
lot.
there's a lot of
Yeah.
FOMO. There's a lot of like FUD out there. Just articles that are saying here's why you should be scared and all these types of things, and that's what they find when they start doing their research around it, and it creates a scenario where they just feel like it's taken care of, and it's something that doesn't have to be a scary proposition. It's something that they can. I mean, we've had some clients say to us, I think I might have even been able to set that up myself. And that level of confidence after feeling so overwhelmed, that goes from one end of the spectrum to the other in terms of how the client perceives a potential challenge with their website.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you're taking that kind of challenge or intimidating speed bump as they look at privacy and go, oh my gosh, I kind of don't really know what to do. And then you're giving them that guidance. Here's the solution, and then they're coming away from it saying that was easy enough. Maybe I could have even done it myself.
Right.
And then
Yep.
understanding that SiteCare, is positioned to be the expert on that and give them the guidance on it and say, recommending solid solutions. So that's great. What would you say to other WordPress professionals or site owners who haven't yet prioritized privacy compliance? They're still trying to manage it all manually, or maybe they aren't aware of the solutions that are out there, that are still in that kind of like scary, intimidated space.
It's risky. It's like, not filing your taxes year after year and then just hoping you never get audited type of thing,
Yeah.
right? Like eventually that type of problem does catch up to you. My recommendation would be to, just give Terminal your money, get this thing sorted out and move on with your life. And it's way easier than filing your taxes too. So,
It
to
doesn't
get
have
up
to
and
be as
running with it.
scary as
It
it
doesn't,
feels,
it
right?
really doesn't. Like, it really doesn't have to be a scary proposition.
Yeah.
But in my mind now, just because I have worked in this space for as long as I have, it's the kind of thing that not addressing it is actually a lot scarier because I have seen the court documents. I've seen real copies of real lawsuits, and not just like, there are lawsuits, but there are also just like you can create a lot of customer dissatisfaction by not taking privacy seriously, and customers are more aware than they ever have been. So when they come and they when they want to know how their data is being used, and you don't have a clear answer for that, or you don't have a policy that clearly addresses that, that's a deterioration of trust, and that's something that you're going to end up you're going to take a hit on that in lots of different ways. Either they don't come back to the website, or they don't buy the product you're selling, or lots of other smaller things that aren't at the scale of lawsuit, but it's death by a thousand paper cuts, really.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad that you mentioned that because really building trust through transparent privacy practices, it's so huge and often overlooked. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. Are there any WordPress specific considerations that you would consider or that you'd like to note of Termly's over 2 million users, a vast percentage of them, of course, are WordPress sites. Can you think of anything, either challenges or opportunities that would be unique to the WordPress community?
Yeah, depending on how data is stored within your CMS, a request for deletion may be more complicated to actually make happen than it seems on the surface. You just understand, like, when a client makes a purchase on your e-commerce site, where all of their personal and private data is stored in that workflow. And if they come to you and say, I want all of my data deleted from your database, understanding what's really involved in that. So that either needs to be very clear in your privacy policy, or that we need to find more clear ways on what that data removal process looks like.
I can hop in with some good news on the data discovery and deletion front. We're in the process of developing an end-to-end solution for that specifically. So that'll entail, the data mapping, eventual integration with third parties for discovery, automation around management of those requests when those users do submit the form and say, hey, I want all my data deleted, just simplifying that entire process. So that's in
That's
the
awesome.
works, and that's kind of exciting there. So I'll throw that in.
Super exciting. Yeah, and the other one I was going to bring up is more for developers, but depending on how you're managing a website, there's a good chance that there are replicas or copies of the website in different places. Like a very common example is staging sites, right? And really, in any non-production environments, most privacy policies are going to have something along there's going to be some kind of data anonymization that should be happening in non-production environments. So just something to be aware of for engineers or developers who are working with these secondary or tertiary environments is, are you managing data in a way that does comply with the customer's privacy policy by making sure that the data you're working with is anonymized and protected.
Yeah, that's a great point. I'm so glad you brought that up. Well, Ryan, thanks so much for showing us how SiteCare has really turned privacy compliance with Termly into a very significant value add, both for your business and your clients. It's been great to chat with you and get an understanding of how SiteCare has really fine-tuned clients' experience around data privacy. Like you said, just taking compliance from a challenge and really turning it into an opportunity.